Hi there, hope you're having a great day so far. Well, the COVID-19 era is going to be one that children will remember, but as being the point in time that they missed out on many things, and mostly the things that mean a lot to them. They will remember COVID-19 being the reason they missed out on being able to go to the park to play, being able to see their friends or go to school, missed out on attending friends' birthday parties, or even being able to celebrate their own birthday party, going to basketball training, dancing lessons, football lessons. I guess the list just could go on and on and on. But disappointment is not an easy emotion to sit with. And it's really hard for us to be able to see children disappointed and upset because of all of this turmoil. To help us get through this and to share some practical strategies we can use when responding to kids' disappointment is our special guest, Kari Sutton. Now, Kari is an expert in fostering children's positive mental health. Now, Kari has helped over 25,000 children, parents, educators with evidence-based strategies, tools and approaches, as well as common sense tips that help kids stop worrying so much and to help manage their anxiety. And this is just perfect for what we're going through right now. Now, her expertise has made her an in-demand conference speaker, author, and consultant in wanting to foster children's positive mental health. And she's also launching her second book, Raising a Mentally Fit Generation, in May 2020. First of all, Kari, how are you?
I'm well, Rachel. How are you?
Look, very well, and thank you so much for your time today and for joining us. And it is really heartbreaking to see kids missing out on so much at the moment. And this point in time and point in history really is certainly unlike anything our generation has experienced when we were children of the same age. So I'd love to know from your point of view, how do you think parents really can help children to empathise with their disappointment?
As you mentioned, this is something that has never happened in the. I don't actually think it's happened in the history of the world. When you look at what's going on with COVID-19 at the moment, and we are all dealing with it in different ways. But as parents, how can we help our kids, and how can we empathise with our kids? Well, a lot of us may be disappointed at the moment as well. We may have had special birthday parties, weddings. I know many of my friends, or several of my friends, have had to cancel weddings or had their kids had weddings be cancelled. So there's a lot of disappointment around. And one thing as adults we need to do is understand a child going to a birthday party or going to see their friends and having play dates. That's similar, even though it doesn't seem on the same level or the same gravity of having to cancel a wedding. They see it as being, or they feel it as being something similar. They're as disappointed. So even though the things are smaller, we need to understand that that means a lot to them as well. So we have to have that empathy and understand that lots of things have been cancelled, and not just that, it is that lots of things have been cancelled, one on top of the other. So that disappointment and upset is magnified.
Mm-hmm. Do you have like any self-calming techniques that you suggest parents could use during this time?
There's a whole range of things that parents could do. It really depends on their child. So this is self-calming or self-soothing for the child. And it's interesting, you hear on the radio, parents might be having an extra glass of wine or something like that to self-soothe or to calm. But what we need to look at is saying, how can we help our kids? What does that look like? Every child will be different, whether it's, and some may have regressed at the moment. I've been working with families where children have started wetting the bed again, where
Wow.
they've gone back to sucking their thumbs because they are, pardon me, they're starting to get worried and anxious. So what's happening for them, and what we need to do is to look and say, what works for our little person? What makes them feel safe, secure, comfortable, and allow them to do that. It may be that they take an extra stuffed toy to bed. It may be that they want an extra story at night. It may be that they want you to be in there as they're going to sleep. Whatever it is, and I'm not saying give in to every demand, but we need to be really aware that at this point in time, just like we're feeling anxious and a little uncertain, they will be feeling even more anxious. So we just need to know what does our child find soothing, and how can we help them have more of that.
Okay, so it's not about applying any new techniques, it's about understanding the child and what has worked previously in the past and applying that technique.
Absolutely, because the thing with applying new techniques at the moment, that's just an added layer of complexity for them to deal with. So it's actually knowing what calms them, what soothes them, because that will be hardwired into their brain. And when that's hard, when we tap back into that, that's when the brain will relax, actually allow us to relax, or the children to relax and go, you know what, I'm safe. I'm safe. It's going to be okay.
Okay. Well, I guess looking at it from a different perspective altogether, this is a question. Do you think that parents can also use this time to help teach their kids how to deal with emotions and disappointment?
This is a critical time to help for us to be able to help our kids deal with those emotions. Disappointment, as you said at the beginning, right? Disappointment is such a difficult thing for us to watch our kids deal with, because it's painful. We have these things called mirror neurons in our brain. When we see somebody doing something or experiencing that, we actually experience a part of that as a part of that emotion as well. And particularly when our children are a piece of our heart that's walking around outside our body. And when they're experiencing the disappointment and they're so upset about things, it's hard for us to watch. But instead of jumping in and rescuing them and then go, oh, well, look, I'm going to buy you a huge piece of Lego, a huge Lego kit, and you're going to do that. It's actually, and I'm not saying that you can't buy a huge Lego kit, but what they need to actually look at is say, how can we help our children sit with these emotions? How can we sit with them? We need to help them. We need to validate them. We need to say, you know what? I can see that you're really disappointed. And I understand why you'd be that. You were looking forward to having a birthday party at the skating rink, or you were looking forward to going to Johnny's birthday party at Laser Force. I understand that that's really hard and that you're disappointed. But at the moment, we can't do that. So it's sitting with those feelings, allowing them to be angry, allowing them to be disappointed, sad, frustrated, and then helping them work through that.
So on the topic of teaching children and using this opportunity and situation at the moment, do you think that disappointment can be a good thing when used as an opportunity to teach, like delayed gratification? This is something that I read in an article not just half an hour ago, and I wasn't sure if to ask the question or not, but
yeah, that's okay.
Yeah.
So I guess this disappointment can help us understand or deal with delayed gratification. So understanding and being able to deal with disappointment does assist us in developing a sense of delayed gratification. So we can delay our basically, for the audience, what delayed gratification means is that you put off something and you can do that and then you know it's coming. The problem at the moment with COVID-19 or the coronavirus is we're not exactly sure how long this time period is going to be. So with delayed gratification, generally you can say, for example, if you've got university students, they can delay, because they're older, they've learned how to delay their gratification and say, you know what, not going out to drink at the pub with my friends tonight, I'll do that after my exam. So, and they've delayed that gratification. For children, particularly now when it's so recent and so raw and so new for all of us, this situation we find ourselves in is really unprecedented. And we're having to delay our gratification as well. And the problem we've got as adults is that we're delaying the gratification, but we don't know when we're going to be able to do that. So you can put out the time frame for a wedding or the children's, they might say, oh, well, we're going to get married next year. But then you go, well, when are travel restrictions going to be lifted? So absolutely, dealing with disappointment and children learning to deal with disappointment can help them understand delayed gratification. But at the moment with COVID-19, we can talk about it and say, next year you might be able to go to the birthday, or when this is over, we can do these things. So it's putting a time frame, but it's a little more difficult because we don't know the time frame.
Yeah, this is something, as you mentioned, even as an adult, this is something very, very difficult for us all at the moment. And it's a little bit like being in this long tunnel, and we just don't know when the end and the light at the end of the tunnel is really going to appear. So hard enough for us adults to deal with it, let alone little hearts and little minds to
Yeah.
be able to grapple their thoughts around it. But is it something that as that parents can actually teach as they're going through it as well, to sort of say, well, I'm feeling this, and if for children to be able to empathize a little bit as well?
Absolutely, because we can say there would be things that we wanted to do, whether you wanted to go see a certain concert, whether you wanted to go out for dinner with friends to celebrate a friend's birthday. You can talk to them. Now, I'm not saying put our worries or our concerns on our children, but just say to them, look, Mum, I didn't get to do these things either, and I'm really bummed about that too. Like, it's saying to them, we are all going through this, and sometimes I feel like going out and punching my pillow or whatever you do, because I get so cross that I can't do the things I wanted to do. So we have to figure out ways we can deal with that, because I understand you are so disappointed, and we are disappointed as well.
Mm-hmm. Now, do you personally think that this can help encourage children to develop the virtue of patience?
It's an interesting question. Patience is, and it will help them. Again, I would most probably qualify this with how old they are. So developmentally appropriate around age, and looking at what's going on for them. Because little people and patience is, so anywhere from 0 to maybe 3 or 4, patience is a really tricky concept. They don't have a lot of patience, whereas coming to 4, 5, 6, 7, they will understand. And we need to say, we're all in this together. We're all trying to be, we're being as patient as possible, because these are the things we have to do. We have to be in isolation to help other people, and we can talk about that in a minute. But it does help them develop patience. However, as you said before, Rachel, and this is a really important thing, is that at the moment it feels like we're going through a very dark tunnel and we can't see that light. So being patient, again, like delayed gratification, being patient is and has been, you can say, you know what, we are going to go swimming. So, for example, in Australia, it might be, we are going to go swimming. If it's summertime, we're going to go swimming in an hour's time. That's when this hand comes there. So that's helping them be patient, and it's got a set time frame. Because of the COVID at the moment, there's not a set time frame. So teaching patience may be better, not with external activities that we're waiting for, but maybe, you know what, we're going to play Uno, or we're going to play mini golf inside on Saturday, so that it gives them the patience to go, you know what, it's Thursday, not playing mini golf today, but I can see on the calendar that's when we're going to play it inside on Saturday in our house. They can help start getting things ready or things like that. So it's that sort of patience that we can be developing.
Yeah. And it gives them a positive experience with understanding what patience actually is, as opposed to thinking patience is something that I'm never going to get. I'm going to have to wait a ridiculous amount of time for. So.
And patience is really important. It is an important virtue, because you can't always have everything you want. We can't go out for takeout. We can't go out for pizza. We can't go and do these things. We can't. So it's about saying, absolutely. And that's all. And that's saying, like, some of these kids, and I don't know if you've seen it, there was a little girl, I think she was about 3 or 4 years old, and she was from Britain, and she's saying, what about the pizza? What about the Chinese? The patience is, she got really frustrated. And the problem is, you can't explain, because we don't know when they're going to be, when those things are going to be brought back in. So we'd have to have it inside an environment we could control.
Yeah. Yeah, really good point. All right. Well, we published your article, and the title is How to Help Kids Cope with Disappointment Caused by Isolation. Now, for anyone that hasn't read the article yet, could you please just give us a little bit of an overview what it's about, and just tell us what inspired you to write it?
I was inspired to write it because I'm working with a lot of families. So we do consultations through Skype and different things. And they were saying to me, so mums and dads were saying to me, you know, Kari, we've got a lot of kids who they're incredibly disappointed. How do we handle this? What does it look like? it's just one thing after another. So as I was saying to you before, it's not just missing out on going to school, end of term parties, those sorts of things. The Easter Bunny. That's why when Scott Morrison, in Australia, Scott Morrison, in New Zealand, Jacinda Ardern, all our state premiers actually talked about the Easter Bunny can still come, because they recognised that layer upon layer of disappointment, this was adding to children's anxiety, worry, and stress. And so parents were asking me, what do we do? And I thought, if some parents are asking me that, there's obviously a need. And that's why I reached out and said, look, can I help them? Can I help your audience and our audience talk about that? And one of the things I guess I really wanted to be upfront about was we had to be honest with the kids. You have to be honest with them and say, you know what, when we're talking about things like disappointment and isolation, we need to tell them why it's going on. So be honest around what's happening, why it's happening, and then help them work through that.
And give the kids the respect that they deserve as well. I think that's really, really important.
Very important, because the children know, Rachel. They know what's going on, and they will have heard about it in the media, at school. So talking about coronavirus with the kids, they will have heard a lot beforehand, and they'll understand or hear this term isolation or self-isolation. And in their minds, unless they understand it, that's why I was saying be really honest and upfront and tell them what's happening.
Yeah, there's lots of great points in the article, and we'll have a link to that in the introduction paragraph. But in your view, really, what should parents be telling their kids about everything being cancelled and having to be in isolation?
The main thing, and I've seen this on memes on the internet and everywhere and things like that, it's really looking and saying self-isolation, it's an act of kindness. We are actually doing something good for other people. So yes, you see about nurses that have to go to work. We're actually making nurses and doctors' jobs easier. We're making these people's lives easier, and we're also protecting Nan and Pop and Grandma and Grandpa, because when we can't visit them, so be really honest about coronavirus makes people sick, but 81% of the people who get it aren't going to get really sick. But those other people, they will get very sick. So what we have to do, the older population, we need to stay away from Nan and Pop and Grandma and Grandpa. That's why we're self-isolating from them. That's why we couldn't have them over for Easter. That's why we may not be able to celebrate their important birthdays or things. So really upfront about that, but then saying, you know, why we can't go to soccer training, why we can't go to ballet or gymnastics or go to school at the moment. What they're talking about is making people's lives easier. So the nurses, doctors, all those sorts of things, we're doing our part. That's why we're self-isolating. It's an act of kindness, because we don't want to spread the germs, and we also don't want to get it, but we don't want to spread germs or be out there and doing those sorts of things.
So this really is teaching kids empathy.
Yeah, very much so. It's teaching kids about saying, you know what, other people are doing it tough. Other people need to be protected. And this is what we're doing. It's about kindness. It's about empathy. It's about understanding. But it's also understanding that, especially, and you talked about this at the beginning of the interview, how do we empathize with our kids? But also they're learning to empathize with us. So when we acknowledge and validate their feelings and say, you know what, it sounds like you're really disappointed at missing out on Johnny's birthday at Laser Force. I can understand that. I'd be really bummed about that too. And I've had to miss out on these sorts of things. So talking, and they will then understand that we've had to miss out. So it's getting our kids to take different people's perspectives, and honestly acknowledging and validating that. Because one of the things, if you think as an adult, if you'd had a bad day at work or were really disappointed about something, you came home and said to your significant other, you know what, I've had a really tough time, I'm so disappointed. And they went, that's all right, you know, it'll be okay, you'll get over it tomorrow.
No empathy.
You must probably feel like, that's right, you'd feel like smacking them. Like, no, what's going on? And that's sometimes what we do to children. Oh, it's going to be okay. That's not what they want to hear. they don't feel understood when we say that as adults. What they need us to do is say, you know what, I can understand you're really upset. I can hear that you're really upset, and it is okay to be really upset. Then, as you said before, how do we help them cope? We sit with that emotion with them. We don't have to talk to them. We can say to them, look, do you want us just to sit with you? It's okay. It's okay to be sad. If you want to go whack a pillow because you're cross, that's okay too. Give them some options, help them move through that, and then we can help them be solution focused on the other side.
Yeah, I think teaching, empathy through these examples is really, really important, and really at this point in time, I think is just a perfect opportunity to be doing this. But in particular, what are the key things you think that parents can actually do to help kids cope with the disappointment they are feeling at this time? What can parents be doing?
So understand that it's coming. That's the one thing. No, and we as parents, we know that it's going to be there. Be really aware of the signs. So you know your children. Be really aware of what that looks like for your child, because some children internalize it. Some you may not see them acting out, whereas other children act out. We do need to put boundaries around behavior, because every emotion, every feeling is valid. But if they're acting out, hurting their siblings, throwing things around the house, that's not okay. So I'm not saying that it's okay for them to act out and do those things. But so we need to say, you know what, I can see that you're really cross. You're really peeved. That is absolutely okay. Go outside, so to the backyard, not breaking self-isolation, but go kick a ball, punch a pillow, do something, get that out. Because we've got to give them constructive ways of doing that. Now, I'm not saying that every child needs to do that. Some of our kids may just need us to sit with them and be quiet with them and not talk, and just be there in that space and go, you know what, it's okay to be really sad. It's okay to be really upset. And I know what that feels like. So acknowledge, validate, empathize, but then help them move through it. And I guess this is one of the things, for me particularly, was once they've accepted and vented their disappointment, frustration, or anger or sadness, we can actually then look and go, how can we guide them in a direction where it's more towards positive acceptance? Because this is going to go on. Now, as we were saying before the interview, it might go on for the next 4 or 6 weeks. What can we do to help our children move through that time in a more positive frame of mind? Because absolutely, disappointment, frustration, and anger right now have been because of isolation, and may still go on, because it's like getting cabin fever. If we've been locked up over school holidays and possibly a week or two before that, you'll get to about the 5 or 6 week and it will just be they're losing their minds and go, what's going on? We're working from home, kids are doing school from home, all of these sorts of things. How do we cope with that? Acknowledge that it's happening, look at that, accept the feelings, look at how they can deal with them appropriately and deal with them in a way that's constructive. Even ripping paper, I mean, whatever they need to do to get anger, frustration, or disappointment out, let them do it in an appropriate, constructive way. And then go, you know what can we focus on that we can control? So I know you've missed out on all these things, but what would you like to do? Do you want to set up a mini golf course inside? Hey, I hadn't thought about that. Do you want to play these sorts of games? How about we could learn to juggle and we could put on a circus performance? We could do these sorts of things. So it's actually figuring out what makes them feel better. If it's sitting with their cat and patting a cat, if it's going and planting something in the garden, if it's playing outside, if it's laying outside and watching clouds in the sky, whatever makes them and you feel better, help them do that. Because as Steve, and this work comes from Stephen Covey, it talks about the circle of influence and the circle of concern. Circle of concern is the things outside our control. There are a lot of things outside our control at the moment, both as adults and as kids. And one of the things we have to realize is, for our children to actually have positive mental health, we need to give them a sense of being part of the solution and being in control of something. So what can they control? And that's why I talked before about saying, you know what, we're being really kind to our grandparents, because we're not going. When we cough or sneeze, if we do go back to school and we cough or sneeze in our elbows or things like that, we're doing the right thing. This is part of being the solution. So now we're in isolation. What can we do at home to make things fun? What could we do? Do you want to cook dinner one night? Or give that to the kids? And again, all age appropriate. So we're not giving 2 or 3 year olds that choice, but we're saying, what would you like to do? As a family, we come up with different things that make them feel better, that give them some power and control, that they can do things. It could be like writing letters to neighbours. It could be writing letters or doing video calls with grandma and grandpa and saying, look, this is what we did today. It could be drawing pictures and putting them in the windows. So when other kids are walking around the streets, if they're doing things like that with their families out on exercise, it's just ways of keeping that connection happening, but also giving them things that they can control, they feel good about, and then making a positive difference in other people's lives.
Mm-hmm. So you're saying it's to listen, it's to validate, then give them some control. And just on the middle part, I don't know if I've asked this question earlier on, but why is it so important to validate their feelings as part of this process?
Because ultimately, it's exactly as I described to you. If we came home as adults and said, you know what, I was so looking forward to this promotion. I interviewed well. I thought I had it in the bag. I dressed up, like I did all of these things, thought I nailed it, but I didn't get it today. And you come home and you say that, and as an adult, if the other adult responds and goes, you know what, it sounds like you gave it your best shot and it sounds like you're really upset. Do you want to talk about it? You feel heard. But if they said to you, you know what, you gave it your best shot. In 6 months' time, I'm sure you can do it again. You know what, get over it. Obviously, they're not worth you. It's okay. There's other fish in the sea or things like that. You don't feel heard. Mm-hmm. The critical part about validating children's feelings is that they feel heard. And that's one of the major things. So acknowledging them, validating them, and empathizing means that our children, no matter how old they are, feel that we've heard them. It's again like being in a safe pair of hands. It's knowing, for us as adults, it's like us going, you know what, that person, whether it be your significant other or best friend, that person really gets me. I'm glad I've got them in my life. They know me, they've listened to me, I feel heard. That's why when we validate our kids' feelings, that's what we do for them.
Mm-hmm. And then giving them the opportunity to choose what they want to do about the situation gives them a sense of control of the situation, as opposed to feeling out of control, would you say?
Yes, and that's why when I was talking about figure out what makes them feel better and allowing them to do that, whether it be how they express their emotions or things like that, it really is giving them a sense of power and control. We all want to have control over our lives. Now, as children, we can't control everything, and as adults, we can't control when the government decides all these lockdowns will be lifted. But what we can control is what can we do inside our homes to make this the best situation possible.
And could you give us, let's say 3 things we can help our kids cope with being in isolation in what we have at the moment, which is an unknown time frame?
Okay. One is that hope that it will end. So talk to them about, look, there is conversation around it is going to end. So give them hope that it's going to end and say, I will be here with you. We are in this together. So 1, again, explain what's going on, why it's going on and why we're doing it, kindness and empathy. 2, it is going to end. And that time frame, we're not sure what it is, but it is going to end. So giving them that hope and optimism. And then 3, really looking at the things you can do that are outside, not outside the box, but things that are outside their normal. So it may be that you don't often go down and lay outside on the grass and stare at clouds in the sky together. So it's just finding little different things that they can be grateful for, that they can hang their hat on, that are enjoyable. Because ultimately it could be going and looking for, now again, this is for younger children, looking for ladybugs in the garden, or those sorts of things. For young kids, it could be that you're spending more time and you do go out and get, whether you've got puzzles or Lego, that you're spending time doing that with them. With teenagers, it could be that you might do a dance on TikTok with them, or whatever it is. It's about being connected, because ultimately when they understand why that it's happening, that the kindness and empathy is there, that they've got hope that it's finishing, that it will finish, that this is not going to go on forever. So that's giving them optimism and hope. And the third one is connectedness. And that's the most important, that connection with you as a parent, with us as adults, that positive interaction, and really having those times. Because to be really honest, Rachel, our kids, what they'll look back on this time, they won't look back on it and say, oh, I've missed all this school. They'll look back on it and say, and what they'll remember is how they felt. Did they feel safe? Did they feel loved? And did they feel that they actually could do something to be part of the solution that this whole world was facing, a problem this whole world was facing? So those are the 3 points.
Oh, I think that's fantastic. Well, look, you've really shared some really helpful and insightful tips for us today. If you were to summarize, I guess, your top tip, or I guess words of advice for parents at this time, what would it be?
We're in it together and you're doing the best you can. Please don't beat yourselves up. Working from home, schoolwork from home, financial worries, all of these things have come tumbling down. This is a time in history that there's been untold things that we never thought we'd experience. You are doing the best you can. And if you love your kids, that's the main thing, because that's what they'll feel. They'll feel your love. They will feel that you care for them. And that's all that you need to do.
I think my biggest takeaway from this chat today has been the fact that what kids are going to take away from this time is what they feel at the moment and how we are making them feel. So, as parents and carers, we have the opportunity to be able to control that environment. So it's up to us to be able to, I guess, make a decision, sort of, what imprint do we want to be able to have on their little hearts and minds in this incredible sort of point in history that we're all sort of living through at the moment. Kari, really grateful for your time today. If anyone's got any other questions for you, whereabouts can they find you?
KariSutton.com, and just you can email Kari at KariSutton.com and I'll get back to you in 24 hours or under 24 hours. So yeah.
Thank you, Kari. Take care and we'll speak soon. See you later.
Thanks, Rachel.
All right, bye.